Hi everyone. Let's just talk a little bit about Venus's position at the moment. I just noticed some really interesting things that you may find useful and interesting for yourself because certainly it speaks to everybody. And of course, how people experience this is a very individual and personal thing, but it is well worth being aware of. So at the moment, Venus is at 2 degrees of Aries. And if you look at what's happening around her, just exclude Hygeia, that's Hygeia, this little black symbol down there, and exclude Eris as well. And just really focus on Saturn, North Node, Neptune, Chiron. So if you look at that arrangement, basically Venus is pretty much in the middle. Okay. So that means she's at the midpoint of Chiron and Saturn. And this position is where she's going to be really for the rest of February, and for most of March as well. So she's going to be in this midpoint structure, this midpoint position, sandwiched, if you like, between Saturn and Chiron. And that's a very important part of her story. That's one thing. I'll speak to that in a minute relative to some thoughts around that. In addition to that, she will go retrograde around the 3rd of March at the early degrees of Aries, meaning she will form. Sorry, pardon me. She will go retrograde at the beginning of March, and then around the 23rd of March she forms her cazimi, okay, and creates the Aries Venus star point. I will come back and speak to that separately because we've still got a fair bit of time, and I just wanted to really focus on two very specific things today. That is that she will be at the midpoint of Saturn and Chiron for weeks and weeks. And when she goes retrograde, what happens is she will come back to the conjunction to Neptune and to the North Node. And that passage is actually happening 3 times. I spoke a little bit about that already, but I just want to bring it up again because I think this midpoint of her position being, sort of sandwiched between Chiron and Saturn, there's some work that she's doing in this part of the journey, which is very, very important for herself relative to healing, and which of course is Chiron. And typically with Chiron, sometimes that energy can be sort of lying dormant. As I said in a live stream I just did a couple of days ago, when Chiron activates something in us, it can bring up, past traumas, memories of things, situation, people that have wounded us, whether that's been consciously, unconsciously, intentionally, or otherwise. It doesn't matter how it's happened. What matters is that it has happened. And I think I said in the live stream as well that when something hurts you and somebody hurts you, or something happens that's deeply painful, the soul retains the memories. So even though we may move on from a situation or a person or whatever it is, the scar, if you like, is there. It's just there. That's why the soul has all these imprints and past life memories, and they can be reactivated, in another lifetime, for instance. And also regarding Chiron, we could have had things happen to us 10 days ago, 20 months ago, or 20 years ago, and those deep Chiron wounds can come up again when Chiron is activated in the sky and in your chart. And as you can see, Chiron is still square Mars. So this energy is still quite volatile, as it was a couple of days ago. But now I'm seeing that Venus is being pulled into this as well, although Venus will not form a square to Mars, because by the time she gets to a degree that would be close enough to Mars, Mars would have moved on basically. So that's not going to happen. But she is going to form a conjunction to Chiron. And she's also going to do 3 passes. She's already done one uh, to Neptune in the North Node. And I think that's an important part of her journey for a couple of reasons, because she's, it's like she's dreaming, if you like, a new pathway, Neptune, conjunct the North Node, with her own dreams, right? With what she wants to actualize in this reality. The North Node is a very, very powerful point, actually. Both the South and the North nodes are in our own birth chart and the transiting nodes as well. And the fact that Venus is doing this triple pass over this Neptune North Node, it's showing us there's something very important that's developing through this journey. But I think what's going to happen is before she can really actualize this dream and these new connections that she's making, she's got to work through whatever this Chiron Saturn energy is bringing up. And as I said, it's going to be different details and circumstances for each person. But, very simply, as I was saying, Chiron is about healing or bringing up things that are deeply painful from the past. And, Saturn is severing. Saturn severs things. It cuts things off. It cuts things out. It terminates things, right? And, at a really healthy level, Saturn really helps us become just stronger in our self-authority, right? And clarity about the boundaries that we need to implement in our life. And in this case, it's got to do with Venus, which is about sharing, giving, loving, relationships, friendships, all those sorts of things, right? And so there's something happening here with Venus in Aries, which is a very challenging position, traditionally speaking, with Venus in Aries, because she's actually in her detriment in this position. But on the upside, Venus in Aries is also seeking that independence and self-love, right? Because it's Aries. Aries is about the self. So she's learning something really important in this window about her own self-love, her ability to love and value herself, and sever Saturn, sever whatever is not is contaminating that journey and that process for her. And she will have to, come sort of head to head, if you like, with some chironic wounds that have occurred that she needs to try to cleanse during this time. And this is all like a story that's building up, because when she creates the Venus Aries morning star, that's a really powerful cycle and point for Venus. That's her being reborn as Pallas Athena. The morning star Venus is Pallas Athena, and she's the warrior goddess. So there's a few layers here. She's got to work through this Saturn Chiron. She's wedged in between them. Midpoints are extremely powerful, I assure you. And as she's working through whatever this Saturn Chiron portal is bringing out, which I think has very much to do with her own self-worth, self-value, self-love, and just basically severing cockroaches and vampires, which I spoke about in my live stream, and called out a particular vampire who literally is a vampire. Anyway, um, and Chiron, it will bring up what's happened, in the recent past, or in the past, a very long time ago. It just depends for different people. So I think, this is important because it can help her rebirth when she forms a conjunction to the sun and she's reborn and she's ready to, if you think about the image of Pallas Athena that was born from Zeus's head, right? Thus, why she is the goddess of wisdom. Her father is the ultimate god of wisdom. So she was born out of his head, right? And if you think about that image, that's the vibration and the energy of the Venus morning star. So she as she's reborn, because as she forms just before she forms the conjunction to the sun, she'll disappear, as it were, and she'll form the conjunction to the sun and then she'll reappear. Now, in certain latitudes on the earth plane, she will actually not be invisible at all. I've already mentioned this. I will speak to it again when I come and do just one more video, which will be on the retrograde cycle and just a few more key things about the Aries Venus star point, because it is a very important cycle. But leading up to this rebirth, there's a lot of things that she's sorting through with this Saturn and with this Chiron, because she's trying to give birth to a new dream and the new connections that she's building in her life with forming the conjunction 3 times to the North Node in Pisces. And when she forms her conjunction to the sun and is reborn, as the morning star, she's literally the divinity that comes out onto, the earth plane, as it were, fully armed and fully equipped with infinite wisdom, if you like. She's just ready to go. There's no stopping her. So if we can think about that, just for the next few weeks while she's working through the Chiron and Saturn components of her being in between those two planets, I think that can be very useful if we can be aware of it and observe what does come up so that we can understand how we might address that in our life, and how that might be really purposeful and really helpful in our journey moving forward. Because when she's reborn as the morning star, it's literally a brand new cycle. Okay. This cycle started actually in 2017 when she was the Aries morning star at that point, right? So 8 years later, which is, in less than 2 months away, she's closing off that 8 year cycle and she's giving birth to a brand new cycle. So very, very powerful transition point. So that's all. That's really all I wanted to share today. And just give you some things to think about. Because a lot of people don't pay attention to midpoints, I don't really hear many people speaking about it. But I've observed the power of planets being at the midpoint of other planets and so forth, and indeed just how powerful that is. And I think this is huge because it is Venus and because it does correspond to everything we love and everything we value and everything we share, receive and give. So if you just think about those words, it covers a lot about our life, doesn't it? So this is a really big deal, her being in the middle of Chiron and Saturn. And yeah, just let me know if this resonates with you and if it already has started showing things up, which perhaps some of the activation or triggers might have been with the Chiron squaring Mars. Starting off part of this journey here as well, because Mars has got to, if you're a female particularly, I suppose, Mars has got to do with the guys in your life, the lovers, the guys you're hanging out with, the guys you're drawn to. So there's some sore spots that are coming up. Um, Chiron is always painful. There's no two ways about it. But um, one thing I've also observed and learnt through the years is that quite often the people that have been wounded the most, that have been through the fire the most, um, have the greatest potential to being um, really great healers as well. It's just how it seems to go, because I suppose it's common sense, really. The more you've been through, provided it hasn't made you, completely disgruntled and, um, just completely angry all the time, um, and resentful. That's the word I was trying to think of. Provided you haven't become just, resentful and bitter and hate the world with the pain and trauma and whatever it is you've been through, then, Chiron, it turns that around into the ability to have, the most powerful capacity for empathy, because you're able to understand other people's pain, simply because of what you have been through. So that's how I tend to see Chiron in the bigger picture. That's the potential of Chiron, but not everyone reaches that potential. That's for sure. Um, yeah, but I like Saturn is always pretty difficult energy, but I think and also let me just say this: if you're born at night, Saturn is going to be more difficult for you. And I have observed that in my own life. I was born at night, so Saturn is my greater malefic. If you're born during the day, it's Mars that gives you the grief, so to speak. Um, Mars and Saturn are the two malefics, and Mars is probably even more difficult in certain ways because of how hot-headed it can be, whereas Saturn has the potential and ability to be a lot more rational and responsible. Mars is not about being rational and being responsible. It's really about just exerting one's power and passion and drive and willpower, um, desires and so forth. But that can be, at the cost and at the expense of hindering or injuring others. Mars is not about self-awareness, but Saturn can be very much about self-awareness. It's, Saturn is the master teacher. And if you are born at night, it can take a long time to really become friends with Saturn, because it's just a really difficult energy to manage. It's just not, in a night birth chart, Saturn is, it's like walking in a dark room with no lights on, and trying to find where the table begins and where the table ends, and just maybe smashing your leg on the chair because you can't see. Saturn creates the boundaries and the forms. It's a diurnal planet, not a nocturnal planet. So in the nighttime, Saturn doesn't work very well. So perhaps for those that are born at night, this might be connected to the aspect of Saturn, because one of the main things about people born during the night is the not knowing when enough is enough, and just simply not knowing when to stop, to tell others to stop. If somebody is invading your energy, your field, your kindness, your heart, stealing your work, things like that, which I spoke about on the live stream, and I dropped about 11 followers from that video, which I'm happy about because that was, I know for a fact that those followers were just vampires. I know that for a fact. So I'm glad they've gone. With Saturn being born at night, it's somebody could be doing all those things, and it's very difficult to have really strong boundaries, and to say, well, hey, you know what, enough is enough, kind of thing. It's a lifelong journey of learning to really implement boundaries, and I think it becomes easier provided the person, has a good level of awareness and insight about themselves. Then the second part of life can be much easier with Saturn, if you're born at night. So, this Saturn issue that I'm talking about relative to Venus here in Aries and then Chiron on the other end, this will have a lot to do with healthy boundaries about who you are allowing, into the field of your heart, and just being really clear about removing things that, or people or situations that are using you, or, just taking from you and things like that. It's about boundaries, basically. And the Chiron part will just bring in perhaps, it'll just put the spotlight on what has happened. Because if we don't think about it like this, if Chiron wasn't there, well, I think the reason it is there in this picture with Saturn is because it's kind of got to bring up what we've experienced in the past that may still be lingering in some kind of way in our life. And the Saturn part is what's going to help us, basically sever that once and for all. That's perhaps a way you can think about it. I'll see you guys very soon. Hope you're all doing well and hope this was useful. Okay, see you soon. Bye.